what everyone wants to know is how to get into the publishing industry, how to write a novel. It's basically probably one of my most asked questions on Instagram that people ask me is, how do you get into the publishing industry? Because it seems like this unsurmountable task. It feels like a fucking mountain. So can you both give me a bit of a description of what you do?
So yeah, I'm a literary agent, and I run a publishing consultancy literary agency, which is all about demystifying the publishing industry and making it more accessible and explaining it to people and giving people more access in terms of writing and getting published. Exactly. And I think that is because, the reason, you say you get asked that question a lot, I think publishing is really confusing. Mm-hmm. I think it really is. It's full of weird quirks, idiosyncrasies. How do you get in? How do you get access? How do you write a proposal? All of those conversations, all of those, the kind of first stage, the first access point of publishing is really hidden. And I think it's something I feel very passionately about in terms of creating more access. So the role of an agent, which is my job, is to work with my client, the author, and to help them develop the IP, work with them on coming up with the idea and effectively creating like a pitch document. Mm-hmm. So this could be a nonfiction proposal. Sometimes it's a fully written manuscript, and I help develop that to a point, create some positioning, and sell it in to publishers.
And there's different degrees of that, isn't there? Sometimes you might just be a sounding board for someone with their ideas, and then you just kind of help them create something.
Definitely, yeah. And then I send it out on submission to people like Romilly, who work at the publishing house, to lots of different publishers. And then the role of the agent is not only to manage the commercial elements, negotiate the deal and the contract and all of that they're responsible for, but also being part of the process from ideation all the way through to publication and beyond. So we're in every PR and marketing meeting, we're in every meeting about production, covers, etc. And we're there to manage the relationship between editor and author, and just make sure everything runs seamlessly.
Gorgeous. And Romilly?
What I do is I'm a publisher, and I have an imprint called Brazen, which you're published on. And the ethos of the imprint, an imprint is like a small publishing house, like essentially. It's just like a small publishing house within a publishing house. And my ethos is books with bite. And I published Women Dating Pretty and now Girl Crush. I published books by Fern Brady, Self-Esteem, Aja Barber, and various others, from like literary to like more kind of polemic. And my role is to be a cheerleader and a whip cracker. So as soon as the book comes onto my desk, or actually more like importantly on my laptop from agents, I get inundated every day with proposals from agents like Abby, but with like Abby's I'm always quite excited. And I then get to choose what books I want to publish. So I publish around 10 books a year. And like Abby, I am the person in the building, like with my author every step of the way. So I edit their book, I get them hopefully a killer cover. Always. I get them like killer marketing, and I'm like their absolute kind of their person on the ground every day, making sure that my company and everyone in the company is like hyped up about the book, and that they are all propelling themselves further than they could usually go to like bring that book into the like broadest possible markets. So yeah, it's just like it's really ingrained. Like you've got to know it so well, haven't you, Floss, through the process?
I have got to know it, but I feel like my getting to know the publishing industry, I feel very lucky with the way I've gotten to know it, because I feel very protected by the people in my team, by both of you, and I feel like having my introduction to, I had nothing to compare it to. Where I come in as like the creative spiral of like, and you know this yourself as an author, and you've worked with a book agent as well. It's like you have all of these ideas, and then you also need the guide of the knowledge and the expertise that you have. And I think that that's something I'm learning about myself is, as a creative person, I can have all of these ideas, and then I also need the, because some people try to get self-published, or they don't want a book agent and all that kind of stuff. But I think I need the structure and the industry insight to be able to craft something that's going to be good for my audience, good for myself. But yeah, because I just didn't even know what I was getting myself into with the publishing industry. So let's start off with Women Don't Know You Pretty and how the book came to be. Do you want to talk a bit about how you found me and approached me?
Slid into your DMs, the good old sexy, classy way. I remember just being kind of watching in awe everything that you were doing for that campaign against Netflix that was a fat shaming about a young girl, I think, who went back to school and had lost loads of weight, and as a result her whole life kind of within that school changed.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd kind of been following your illustrations because I just thought they were really cool, and watching that and watching you grow, and I just was like, this person has got a voice, they've got something fresh, they've got something new to say. And I'd published and then actually consequently gone on to represent Laura Bates' Everyday Sexism, which was kind of a huge feminist social movement on social media. And I think this kind of taps into what Romilly was saying. Before, publishers had full domination in terms of what they would publish, and they could decide. And what happened with social media is the audience started to tell publishers what they wanted to read and who they wanted to hear from. And they would gather, around these kind of sound boxes, platforms, and there would be kind of trends, and there would be information available to publishers in terms of who they wanted to hear from, what ideas were resonating, what trends were happening. And that was an incredibly exciting time for publishing. Certainly for me, I think that was where my career began, because that's the way I worked. I was approaching people that were doing something cool, that were doing something interesting, that were talking about something in a new way that I hadn't heard before, or approaching something in a way that was slightly different. So that was what you were doing. And I came to you and I said, do you want to write a book? I would love to work with you. Do you have any ideas?
I remember I had a meeting with you in Soho.
Yes.
And I just met my management, and you were working with them on something also. And it was all like divine timing.
Yes.
Everything was like, oh, you're working with my management.
Yes.
I'm working, you've messaged me. You didn't even know I was working with them. And
No.
Anyway, and I just remember you approached me like, I think you should write a book. I think they're really good. And the ideas that I was coming to at the beginning was so different to how Women Don't Know You Pretty actually turned out to be.
Yes.
So can you talk a bit about that process? So I wrote the book proposal. We sent it back and forth until we got it perfected.
Exactly.
And then you sent it out to publishers. And then what happens then?
So I submit it to publishers. I call up, I'm meeting with editors day in, day out, constantly having conversations. I'm watching the market. I'm seeing what's working. I'm listening to what publishers are looking for. And so I call up Romilly and various other editors, and I'm like, hi, this is what I'm sending out on submission. This is the proposition. It's really exciting. Really get them excited about the project, about the author, and of course about the commercial possibilities behind a project. That then goes in-house, and an editor takes it forward to an editorial meeting where if the other editors agree with the project and want to sign off on it, it can then go forward to acquisitions meeting with the editor, and Romilly will talk more about this later, I'm sure. The editor will draw up sales figures, P&L, and effectively go into a boardroom where the publisher is, where the head of marketing is, where the head of production is, basically all the top bods in the company, and pitch, this is the book, this is where it would sit in the market, this is how I would publish it, and then get signed off to make an offer. Now, sometimes, quite common, you might not get any offers. Sometimes you might get 14 offers, and then you're in an auction system whereby you have knockout rounds and you keep going until you get a smaller group of publishers, and the author will meet those publishers, have conversations.
So when you say that, you mean different publishers, let's say multiple publishers want to publish this book that's coming, this book idea, they will bid against each other.
Yes.
And the author will then get to decide which offer they want to choose.
Yeah, and I would say that in terms of the editor side, so from the editor point of view, we get sent. I don't want to give a broad brushstroke number, but I would say many. 15. At certain points in the year, around Frankfurt and London Book Fair, that just spikes. That's 35. And
35 what?
Proposals.
Or a day.
A day. When it's
when
London,
it's crazy.
Frankfurt. So from an editor's point of view, obviously the respect of the agent who sends it in. It's
Yeah.
always very helpful. You know, if you think, hey, she's got great taste, which I've, always thought with Abby.
Great taste and integrity and
Integrity,
all the stuff.
soul, and there's a definition in her work that never strides out of the right course that personally. But we get sent so many proposals, and I think that's the thing that for listeners, like when they're thinking about crafting a book proposal, with or without an agent, they have to consider that just deluge. It's not that we don't want to read every proposal. The reason I'm in the industry is because I'm a book maniac. Like I will listen to an audiobook in a bath while trying to read something on my phone. It's not that I don't want to read every book proposal, but I physically can't.
Yes.
I've also got 10 books that I'm trying to publish and I'm trying to manage. So it's a really useful thing for people to understand that whatever is in that book proposal on that first page, in that opening email, and I know it sounds so trite, because it's the first line. It doesn't have to be the first line, but there has to be something that attacks me, that brings me into whoa, I can't put this down.
You need to be sold.
I need to be I'm going to have to cancel an internal meeting. That's what I do when I Sorry, my publisher's probably now fire me hearing that. But I've got, I have to make time suddenly because I'm this is good. Because then, if I'm really excited about that book proposal, I will then try and rush it through acquisition. So I don't even sometimes I don't take it to editorial meetings.
And what's acquisition?
Can I just, before we go into that, can I just add, because I think that's such a crucial point. And the thing that links back to that is Romilly's getting 35 a day. But literary agencies like Bergstrom Studio, the agency that I run, is getting hundreds of applications. And through that, agents are going through and taking the creme de la creme, or the thing that resonates with them. You can send something to an agent and have 15 agents turn you down and one call you within 24 hours and be oh my God, I love it, I'm obsessed. That's all you need. You just need one.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's even to get to that stage where you're a proposal rocking into Romilly's inbox, there's a huge, even more competitive part of the journey to get through in getting an agent's attention. Yeah. So I think it's important to say to aspiring writers, you're not necessarily getting picked up because you're not a great writer, because you don't have potential. It is just incredibly competitive. And sometimes there's a little bit of luck in what resonates and what doesn't. Yeah. And it is really, really hard. So anyone who's there trying to write or it's not to do with your talent as a writer. It's often to do with the numbers.
And also the people who you send it to's taste.
Yes.
Look at their lists.
Yes.
Look at what they publish.
Look at what they represent.
If you're sending your proposal to a historical fiction dude, and yours is about female savagery, it may not resonate. It just may not. So do
your homework.
Yeah, do your homework, and especially of editors as well. I'm sure when you came in to meet me, you were what's she about? What books does she have?
Well, it's I was in a very good position, but it was almost like dating, isn't it? It's this is what I bring to the table. Mm-hmm. What do you bring to the table? But I also need you, and you also need me. Mm-hmm. And I did sit with multiple editors. And what I found interesting about the whole process is my integrity with who I went with was so important to me. Yeah. And I remember where I was. I think I was on Carnaby Street when Abby, my book agent, called me and said,
I love the way you're always in these iconic places when big things happen to you. I'd be just got out of the bar. I was on Carnaby Street.
I was on Carnaby Street at some event, and then I stepped outside because I got a call from you, and I know I was waiting to hear. And it was that phase where I was does anyone think that what I have to say matters and is important enough to be on a bookshelf? And then you called me and you said about the offers that we had, and then that there were going to be meetings to follow. And I didn't believe any of it was real. Even when I was publishing Girl Crush, do you remember when I was coming to you with the idea? And then I was but nothing's going to happen. You were what do you mean? I'm your fucking book agent. I'm the one that's going to make this happen. And I was yeah, well, I've just got, this, I'm writing this proposal to you, but it doesn't matter because it's not going to I don't even know why or what that is. And even as someone who has been a best-selling, record-breaking published author, I was still like, surely not a novel.
You couldn't connect to that though.
No.
You couldn't connect to the fact that you were a best-selling author. There was no...
There was like a cognitive dissonance. There definitely was.
Yeah, because my idea of what that is looks and sounds and feels different to how it does feel. And also
That's interesting. Talk more about that then.
Yeah.
What's the disconnect? What feels differently to what you expected it to?
So before I became an author, I had this idea of an author, and not only because people tell me what that is, like someone who studies years in English literature and does all of this stuff and has all of these worthy degrees to be worthy of being in that space. It was this idea that I needed to have gone down a certain route and down a certain line, and then somehow that's when it's massive imposter syndrome stuff. It's like, surely not me who, in my head, an author is like a white man in his 60s with like a beard.
They often are.
Yeah. No, exactly. And then I was
a lot of them were.
Yeah, a lot of them were. Sorry, that's more.
And it's this idea of like, oh my God, I'm doing this, but how am I doing this? I don't really know.
So many people feel like that. And there's this really funny thing happens when people go away to start writing a proposal, whereby they start writing it in this voice. And it's almost like they impersonate the white man.
Author voice.
In this authorial, like, and I'm going to say this in a very way. And the amount of times when I get the first version of the proposal and I go back and I'm like, where's your voice? Whose voice is this?
Where's the person I wanted to sign on?
Who are you trying to sound like?
Yeah.
And you have to help the writer get out of their head into what they think an author is. And so I think it's really common.
But I would say, going back to When Don't You Pretty, when the reason why, as I was saying, loads of proposals, blah, 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 when I saw Women Don't You Pretty, like a fucking arresting title, let's be honest. Like, I was like, hell yeah. But also, your voice in that proposal was wild. Like, it was angry, it was arresting, it was asking so much more of the reader than I felt that previous books I had been like sent in that area.
Yes.
You had this, like, it felt like there was energy and like there was something like totally different about it, about how you articulated yourself and the way you did it and the directiveness. And I actually think, to your point of all those things you said about like, oh, I didn't get my English diploma and hang it on my wall and I don't have a cravat. All those reasons. Oh, why you are a best-selling author? Because you aren't writing in academic prose, because you're not writing the way like other books have written, about this subject. Yes. You're writing from your point of view about the things that have affected you and the answers you found yourself. And like that is what makes your writing so unique. And like I really, really believe that's what makes it resonate so much with like younger women and actually all women, like mothers and some men as well.
I was just constantly following my fire, and that's what I will need to do for the rest of my life if I'm going to do what's going to be right for me in that moment and create the work that is needed instead of the work I think people need. Because the second I step into that is when I lose it.
Sometimes with you, I think that it's not so much like a leap of faith, it's a leap of faith in yourself that you have to take. Because you can do it, you've done it, and you will do it again, but you have to find a way in which you allow yourself to know that and take that risk. Because I remember with Girl Crush, for example, like when we all sat round and you'd sent me like a proposal and it was good, but we wanted to work it up, and you were just like, I don't know how to do this. I've never written a fiction book. And I was like, well, not many people who are a debut fiction writer have written a fiction book before, Florence. I was like, that in of itself is the irony here. The dramatic irony is that like no one has written a book before they start writing it. And I feel like you really enjoyed that creative freedom of writing fiction.
Oh my God. I woke up every single morning excited to go back to the altar of writing the book. And for me, in terms of the writing process for Girl Crush, it was not what I thought it would be. I thought it would be regimented. I thought it would have a structure. but I would come to things in the middle of the night. I would come to things during a hookup. I would come to things walking down the street. I would come to things when I'm talking to a stranger on the street and I like the way that they move their hands. And I'm like, okay, Rose needs to move their hands like this. And then, and all of these little parts of people, it was like I was living and breathing the book to the point where it was quite annoying. And I was probably very consumed by it, where I was not really interacting with people in a way that wasn't like, that would be good for the novel. This would be good. And it was just this constant, like I was in it, I was seeing the characters everywhere.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. It's
beautiful.
It's immersive.
Such a
it was
beautiful
immersive.
process.
And I listened to music, which I can't normally do when I write, but if I had it quietly on in the background with candles and incense and I felt like I was in the environment, it would, the lyrics or the words or how the music made me feel would inspire the scene for a novel, novel. And then I published that playlist, and the music was inspired to the point where Romilly was like, "Okay, you're writing this a bit too much like a screenplay at the moment." And it was very like even like the sex scene, which we spoke about so many times. The sex scene in Girl Crush was initially 10,000 words long, which is about the length of a dissertation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually over because
Yeah.
I think that sex scene, I had like trimmed, like
Oh, over
I
and
had
over.
trimmed, and like I mean, we managed to get it down to I think like 2,800. It was epic.
It was
sex scene.
extensive.
It was a blow. No pun intended. It was a blow by blow. I was like,
Like all these tiny little things, yeah. But I think I was surprised. But so to anyone who wants to write a novel, I actually didn't start on chapter 1 because it was too scary for me.
Yeah.
So I started in, spoiler alert, the breakup scene because I wanted to go straight into the chaos. I loved writing something that was funny and I was enjoying it while I was doing it, making something just so like drama, comedy, over the top, and giving this kind of like sarcastic tone to Eartha with what she was experiencing with Matt.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it so much. And then there was, again, coming back to the work and coming back to it and changing little things and giving him funny little one-liners and stuff.
Tracy Emin of Techno.
Exactly, Tracy Emin of Techno.
My favourite line. My favourite line.
And that is how I kept going and kept going and kept going. And I actually, like, we talk about this all the time, Romilly, but my final manuscript was about 160,000 words.
It was Bible length. But it was amazing because
we chopped it down.
We did chop it down, yeah. You received half of that.
Girl Crush, if you've held it in your hands, that is 100,000 words.
Yeah.
And
So-
Women Don't Owe You Pretty is about 40,000.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
we trimmed 60,000
We
words
trimmed
off.
1.5 Women Don't Owe You Pretty out of Girl
Yes.
Crush. So I would say with you, like, what was so clear is that your energy I didn't want to cap any of it when you were first writing because you were just going.
Yeah. You don't want to stop the
Yeah,
spilling.
but you ran several marathons, and I think we only needed one. And I kind of was like, oh my god, the energy you've expended. But we changed a lot of the narrative. Like we played around with plot lines, and characters decided like within the book to like need more from you,
Yeah.
or to need more from
to be killed.
or to be killed, or to be like hiked off. Like the book evolves as you evolve as you devolve yourself, as you evolve with them.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about some of the characters and like who are your favourite characters to write?
Yeah.
Okay, my favourite character to write was probably, it will change all the time depending on the mood I'm feeling in, but perhaps on reflection, Evie, because I think Evie was massively also inspired, her demeanour, by Patsy Stone from Ab Fab, just in terms of her, when I imagine the way that Evie moves, it was very like pushing forward, constantly smoking a cigarette, always with the sunglasses on, that has this such a powerful energy that you can't help but want to be liked by this woman, even when she's giving you every single reason to not trust her with her words, but to just be so powerful that you can't help but be drawn in. And that's what I wanted to have in contrast with Eartha, who's fresh out of this relationship. She's feeling very vulnerable. I really wanted that contrast with the characters. So Evie also gave us so many like iconic one-liners. And she's definitely also, her taste is heavily inspired by my taste. I was basically like planning so many dream interiors when I was like planning her flat with the checkerboard floor. I was like, oh yeah, where's this coming from? That's how I'd like to do my house. And I was, infusing a lot of my own personal taste into the novel for sure. That was really fun to write Evie, and also with her character, I wanted to keep it very ambiguous about, because of the gaslighting that Eartha experiences with Evie, I wanted to keep it very ambiguous about whether or not she was real, so giving her the acronym of the name, the EV, who is she? Is she real? Is Eartha imagining her?
And obviously, like, Eartha comes up against a lot of different people in the book. A lot of her followers have like really hot takes on who she is, how she is, and how she's changing. Was that like, did you kind of get inspired by stuff that you've experienced, like that kind of narrative of people following you?
Yeah, well, I think with Eartha's experience, she was so unprotected. And that's something that I'm seeing happen a lot online also with people on TikTok, is they'll go viral and then they're held to the same fucking standard as like news politicians. And that's definitely something I've experienced as well, but probably to a lesser degree, because I've put myself into this arena. Whereas what I'm fascinated by is I've got friends who will go viral on TikTok and then be like, how the fuck do you do this all the time? I've got people looking at the inside of my bedroom. I've got people asking this of me. I've got people asking me to talk about this crisis because I've got a platform that I was literally given yesterday because I uploaded a video, left it and it's gone viral.
Yeah.
And it's like, you should be doing more with your platform. You should be doing this, da, 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 da. And I'm not going to sit here and say people don't have a responsibility with their platform. That's not true. I know the power of having one. I have one myself. But there's this emphasis that we're putting on young girls who go viral on TikTok or Instagram or something to suddenly be these spokespeople for things they never put a stamp on themselves for being. And we're just kind of holding them to the same regard as like news reporters. And now, like Matt Hancock was just on I'm a Celebrity. So it's like the politicians are coming, we're all merging.
Oh yeah, well, it's all getting like middle ground, isn't it?
And it's like that Andy Warhol quote about 15 minutes of fame. Everyone's getting it now. And we're all kind of blending to the point where I feel like the culture of a celebrity is blending and merging to the point where, not in a bad way, it kind of means less now. And it means, what is a celebrity? If we've got A-listers who we traditionally would just see on a red carpet going on TikTok telling their followers about like the person they're having sex with at the moment. And it's just, we're blurring the lines between it. Yeah. And I think that's what was really exciting to explore in Girl Crush with Wonderland. It was this heightened version of social media that I don't think we're that far off from. But it was more interesting to kind of put it on steroids, because I think people, a bit like Black Mirror, when people watch Black Mirror, you can go, oh God, we're not that far off. But if you're too close to it, I think people are going to go, oh no, that's not how things are.
What you've done, and hopefully by our publishing it and like getting it right and making it look good and all of these things, has opened up books to a new generation of people. Yeah. Because I think one of my greatest fears is like, we got to a place in book publishing where we were just publishing for that 60-year-old white male dude, because that's the
reader.
Because people will be like, that's the big readership. That's the market.
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on a sec.
We know that those people don't buy books written by women.
But the whole market is like, there's a whole market of interested readers that no one was publishing for.
Yeah.
That's what your book did, is it opened people up and go, oh wait, books are being published that I need to hear.
For the girlies.
Yeah. But also just for about them and about their needs and their wants.
Yeah. And they're reflecting their experiences. Yeah.
And Girl Crush was the same. Yeah. Girl Crush, people were like, wait, I hear heard. Yeah. I feel heard. Yeah. This is something that makes sense to me and my friends and my politics.
How did you feel with in terms of the process of writing a nonfiction and writing a fiction, how did that differ in terms of the level of pressure that you felt to maybe, did you feel that you had more right to write a nonfiction than you did for a novel, for example? Or how did that?
I wouldn't say I felt I had more right. Only maybe with Women Don't Be Pretty, because I was talking from my experience and I was talking about stuff that I'd already spoken about. So I was like, okay, I'm already well versed and well practiced in talking in this way. It resonates with hundreds of thousands of people.
People are responding to this content already.
And there's a narrative that has been developed.
It was less of a risk for me to publish nonfiction. It was scary though, because I was like, well, fuck, I have this audience. If this amount of people read this, I have a responsibility to say things right. I have a responsibility to say things correctly, even though in a few years' time, I might change my mind about this, which I have on so many things. And not in a drastic way, but in a way that I want to include more nuance. So just as my life has gone on, I'm like, I want more nuance to this. And that's what the podcast I have is basically for, is just to add more nuance to all the stuff I love and talk about. But I felt I had a big responsibility to get every single thing right. And then when it came to fiction, that went all out the fucking window. I wrote the messiest characters, politically incorrect, saying the wrong things, doing their best, but I think I really wanted to add that humanness to Girl Crush, because
which is so freeing, isn't
it?
It
is so freeing. And also I know a lot of my audience
break
still
the walls as well, can't you? You can kind of break their systems.
I know that a lot of my audience also, I've taken my audience to this place of being aware of social justice issues and feminism, and I also was like, well, fucking, no, people would message me basically, and you've heard me tell the story before, saying, Floss, I've read Women Don't Be Pretty, and I feel crap. I feel awful about myself because I'm crying over a boy, I'm heartbroken. Am I a bad feminist? And I was like, oh my God, no. Have I got it all wrong? Am I not putting enough humanness into my work?
Yeah.
Am I telling people you need to be the person? And I'm obviously not saying that, but I think that when you don't show your messiness or your humanness, just because you don't fucking want to, and not everyone's entitled to see a mess on social media, I was like, oh God, people think I'm a perfect feminist. Fuck no, absolutely not. So then when I wrote Girl Crush, I wanted to show all of these mistakes and all of this humanness and even questioning your sexuality. You know, Earth has just come out. She doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. And so many people that message me are like, hey, I've just come out as bisexual and I don't know what I'm doing. And I just wanted to normalise it all. Normalise the mess, normalise not knowing what you're doing, normalise being an amazing friend and loving your friends, and then also being a really shitty friend because you've got so much, when a text from a person comes in and it's another fucking task on your plate. Like just all of this stuff I wanted to normalise because I think so many women in particular, I feel like there's been a shift between women needing to be the perfect housewives and now we need to be the perfect feminist. We need the perfect morals. But not only do we need the perfect morals, we have to display them on social media all the time, constantly, or else. And I wanted to write this book where people were kind of given a little permission slip to be a bit more messy.
Yeah, I feel like what you do is you destabilise the notion of perfect. Like the notion of perfect is a problem. It's problematic, full stop, for everyone. Like it really, like it's a really destructive
I'm
word.
trying to do it.
It doesn't exist.
It
It's a
doesn't
falsity.
exist. It's a false negative. Like it's not it's not a goal. It's not the end of any. Like it's never something you should progress towards.
There's no destination.
There's
in
no
perfection.
destination, barring like it's a cul-de-sac of your own hatred and your lack of fulfillment from just constantly trying to over-perfect. But I do think what you do, like when you're writing the fiction, is you were just being like, you're writing a kind of cautionary tale about how women can almost be assaulted by
won't save you.
perfectionism.
Perfectionism won't save you.
Exactly.
And it's a thing I'm still learning myself also. I needed Eartha to be bisexual because there was no books that I read when I was younger or anything. I saw The L Word, which was just iconic, but just so drama and chaos. And I wanted something that was a bit more tender, a bit more real, and that was this kind of raw coming out story that wasn't, I don't know, like a massive focus on it of being perfect. And even though there was the thing of like not being accepted from either world, which is such a stereotypical bisexual experience, it is a stereotypical bisexual experience for a reason. And it was really important for me to write a bisexual main character because every single person that has read it has said, everyone has messaged me saying, I feel like you have stolen my thoughts. So everyone who's read it has been messaging me like, I think you have literally stolen my thoughts. I had to put the book down and wonder if we ever had a conversation because this is my thoughts. Obviously not everyone can relate to it, but every bisexual woman has messaged me that on Instagram, which is just wild to me because it's such a universal experience for some of the things. And also the thing is when I was writing the novel, I was like, okay, what kind of an experience do I want Eartha to have? Do I want it to be incredibly positive to show that like, okay, queer people can have this really happy romantic love life that goes incredibly well? Or do I want to show how real it is and also make it really romantic because we deserve some of that as well? And
romanticise the experience slightly to give that escapism.
I wanted to give this
and joy.
realistic, like Eartha does not know what she's doing the first time she has sex, but she does have a lovely time. And, you know, it wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, Eartha gets fucked with a strap-on by Phaedra and she's just all of a sudden this experienced, like having lesbian sex with Phaedra. And there's so many ways that you can tell a story, a queer story that's just so unrealistic that I don't think any of my audience would have related to.
And also there's good and bad sex in every in every sexuality. So it's like, so that's why we were like with her second like sex scene
With Jazz,
we were like, it could probably be like a bit terrifying and a bit like what is going on. But I just, because in every trope like that, bad sex is bad sex. You know, that's just a fact.
That's one of the most universal experiences,
Absolutely.
sadly.
And I think, what kind of fears do you think people have when it comes to writing and publishing a book? Because I think one of the things is fear of changing your mind about what you've published. And I never want anyone to fear publishing work because they might eventually change their mind in the future.
The nature of being human is that the mind isn't a solid beast. Like that's the whole nature of humanity, being curious and having an agile mind is for that reason. So frankly, like we should all be allowed to change our minds. I'm obviously not going to be publishing hate speak, so like maybe if that's the way. But other than that, change your mind, write a book, delve into something, dip your toes in, feel your way through. It's the best way you can try. Like, and ultimately, no one is going to hold you to account if you suddenly discover something later on. I mean, the amount of books that have been written in history where suddenly they're like, and then they find a new historical discovery and they're like, oh wait, the
they changed the intro.
They're like, the Neolithics were alive 150,000 years ago. Sorry, we got that wrong.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Being wrong, again, going back to the perfectionism.
Not being afraid of that.
Part of, I think that you're worried about publishing. I think that your worry stems from the perfections
Yes,
thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
And we all need to be like way better at letting that go because it's destructive.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
I think it comes back down to the medium as well, because you know, an Instagram post can be deleted.
Edit caption.
A blog post is, transient. TikTok lasts a few seconds. There is a permanency around books.
Which is why it's brave as fuck.
That does, exactly. And it does exist. Let's not shy away from that. It is a completely different thing. So the first conversation that I have with clients before I work with them, like, is this the right book? And is this the right time? Because a book isn't going to go away. It is going to follow you around and it is going to be brought up and mentioned every time you do a talk, or, it will be part, that's why the strategy agent's role is definitely about the bigger long-term strategy of an author and what they want to achieve. But I agree with Romilly completely. I don't think that means that we need to be afraid. And I think there needs to be more understanding and more acceptance of humans evolving, humans being contradictory, humans learning.
One of the things that I was going to mention to you, Floss, is we've been talking about the fact that your book has allowed new audiences into bookshops and into books themselves. I would also say from inside publishing, you perhaps don't know this, so this might come as a surprise. It probably won't come as a surprise to Abby. But when a book has become successful, when a book has stepped way above everyone's expectations, been a bloody record breaker, bestseller, everyone inside publishing takes notice. It's not like it's that the whole genre, we call it like genre breaker, because it breaks the genre. It's not a classification of a book that people have previously made any room on their lists, room at their publishing house. So the whole of publishing gear shifts.
Yeah. Okay.
So that more young women writers will be published, and more agents will come forward with proposals. So not only are you like
you're proof of a market that exists and that works.
You are proving a market exists.
Right.
So I would say that the after effects of Women Don't Know You Pretty, like not just from readers, but from the percentage in the year after and the year after that of young women being published will have changed.
Yeah.
And that is like an exceptional feat. And I don't think I've ever told you that.
No, you haven't. Oh, okay. Well, that's fucking amazing to hear. And just makes you want to do it again and again and again and again. So we're now going to move over to listener questions. But this time you're going to be asking me the questions. Usually I read them out myself, but go for it.
Why did you choose the name Eartha?
So I always told myself if I was ever going to have a child, they would be called Eartha. And then I decided to spare the child and just give it to the protagonist of my novel instead. Because something about the name, I've never wanted children. It's never been a thing in my life, but I just had this name reserved for something big. I was like, it's got to be, it's so gorgeous. I also have a few book titles in my head where I'm like, this needs to be in 20 years when I write this novel, it will be, this is the time, I've got it in my head. I have all these like sound bites, and Eartha was just this big sound bite, and I needed a name for my protagonist. And so I just gave her it. And also because of Eartha Kitt. And she has that iconic clip where she's talking about not compromising herself for a man. So yeah, it just kind of came from that.
Love it. Did you purposely spell Evie just with the two letters to make her seem more kind of AI-like?
So, not AI-like, but I really like this question because Evie was intentionally left without a first and last name because I wanted the reader to think and question whether Evie was real, whether she was Eartha in some ways or another, because you just never know her first name, you don't know Eartha's last name. There's all that confusion that I wanted to create.
And there's similarities between them.
There are a lot of similarities between them that I had so much fun plotting into the novel. And yeah, a lot of parallels between them. And I wanted them to kind of mirror each other in a way that they were, it was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde vibe going on with them. And yeah, I just think it was definitely intentional to keep her name Evie. But yeah, I'm trying to talk about it without spoiling things.
Yeah,
but
read the book.
Read the book.
Would you want to turn Girl Crush into a movie or a TV series?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
Does Phaedra or Eartha's playlist actually exist?
So there was a glitch with this. So I really wanted the Spotify playlist link to work, but because it was private, the link expires in 7 days, and I thought it was going to be a permanent link. So the link I put into the book is a link to the playlist that Eartha and Phaedra made for each other. So they do exist, but instead I made the Girl Crush Listen Along playlist, which also has some of the songs that they made for each other in there.
What's your favourite chapter and why?
Okay, favourite chapter, the breakup scene, just because
You wrote it
it's
first as well.
funny.
Yeah.
It's funny, and I enjoyed writing it. I enjoy writing it so much and just taking everything to the most ridiculous degree. I think I really have fun. I have a lot of fun dramatising things. So the breakup scene is one of my favourite scenes. Another favourite one, which everyone in my immediate life has told me they cried over, was the very short chapter where Eartha is on the phone to her mum. Landslide, I think it's chapter 3.
Yeah.
And I remember when I handed everything into you, you were like, there needs to be something between this here. There needs to be something between the breakup and Eartha moving on. And then that's when I wrote the scene with her and her mum, and I cried the entire time writing it. So I was at my kitchen table, had all my candles on, and I just wrote it in the night, through the night, the whole thing. And I cried the entire time fucking writing it, thinking I was there.
When is Girl Crush coming out in paperback?
I don't actually know. I don't think we have.
August.
I didn't know we had a date. I thought we were just
August.
planning the cover.
No, August.
Okay.
All your books come out in August. August.
Okay, thanks. I know now.
It's coming out in August, and there is going to be something a little special.
Something additional?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a bonus chapter.
You're going to reveal what it is.
No, not yet.
A lot of people have asked about this.
Yes, it's to do with Eartha and Phaedra. So there will be a bonus chapter about what happens or what happened.
And I feel like that,
Stunning.
I feel like that is something that people are slightly tantalised.
Yes, I've had a lot of questions about it. A lot of people want closure. Some people want a second book.
The problem is with all these things, it's like everyone wants closure for relationships, but I don't know if I've ever got closure from a relationship.
It doesn't exist.
I think the best forms of like closure are just, they just go onto an island and then, they're fine, they're living, but you're never going to see or touch them again. How did you overcome the first blank page?
Okay, so yeah, I've already spoke about this in terms of I didn't actually start on the first page of the book. It was just too frightening for me to start the first sentence. The way I wrote the book was I had this skeletal structure of this is what happens in this chapter, this is what happens in this chapter. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without Abby telling me, this is what you do, it's easier, you need a structure, because then I can just go, okay, chapter 3 today, boom, here's a little synopsis I've written for it. I would not be able to do it without that. If it's just ideas and thoughts swirling around my fucking head in the air and I've got to catch them about, oh yeah, let's just write this breakup scene. I need a little synopsis and then I go and write it. Mm-hmm. And I just start with them moving. I walk into the room, he slammed this, whatever, and then it just follows. I didn't plan out a single chapter in terms of its details. I didn't know what was going to happen in the chapter. So with the sex scene with Phaedra and Earth, for example, I didn't know that they were going to end up fucking in front of a mirror. It just happened as I wrote the scene, and as things unfolded, I was like, okay, what would happen in a hookup here? Maybe this would be a bit awkward. Maybe she spill some wine on the carpet and be pissed off about it, but need to be in the moment. And all of this stuff, you've got to kind of get into the characters, fucking cliche as it is, and be like, okay, what might happen here? What could add a bit of comedy and contrast with what they've just been doing and all of this kind of stuff. So I never actually planned out a scene. But maybe I had in my notes app like a funny thing that I wanted to get in somewhere, and then I based a scene around that. So the process of writing it all was really different. But in terms of a blank page, when you're looking at a blank page, I had a friend give me some incredible advice once that she did. It was so flippant to her, but for some reason it really resonated with me. And isn't that deep? She just said, write one sentence a day. Tell yourself, I will write one sentence a day, and you never fucking end up writing one sentence. You just begin. So you go, well, I can only write a sentence, and then it follows and it follows and it follows and it follows. And before you know it, you've written 1,000 words. And you're like, wow, I did a fucking 1,000 words today. That's amazing.
Or 220,000 words.
Also, most of writing a book is actually tweaking, editing, judicious pruning. I think there's a fear of what you get down on the page. It's not going to be good enough. That's not very good. That's not a good
And
sentence.
that's final.
But it's never going to be. The first draft of every book I've ever read has never been a work of art. Writing isn't just writing. It's rewrites, it's edits, it's tweaks, it's playing.
So many eyes going over it.
And that's why there's such a role as an editor. I mean, there wouldn't be a role as an editor if the first thing you had to put down had to be like this
I didn't
golden
know
perfect
before
stamp.
publishing. I didn't know every author had an editor.
Yeah,
like, that's just.
And like, you know, we can be honest as, you know, with Girl Crush, you know, the editing process, we did lots and lots of edits. And,
so many.
And like some, you know, there might be a couple of sentences that came out first time and we haven't touched them, but most sentences get touched, tweaked, replaced, rediscovered, put somewhere else. By the author, by the editor, by the author the second time round,
and also
by the copy editor, by the lawyer. Like there are so many people over those words. Yeah. So I would say, don't be precious about the words that you write. Be precious about the intention with which you write them.
And the story.
Be
precious with the story.
Final question, which feels like it's ending on a bit of a downer. Did you enjoy writing Girl Crush? Were there times when it was stressful?
Yes, of course it was stressful to write. Oh my God. Again, all those thoughts that come into my head. Why the fuck am I writing a novel? Why me? Why am I the person to do this? Why is this a story worth writing? All of those crippling self-doubts that come in, and also being told that some of my work that I loved needs to go. So something
that's at me. Floss is saying that at me, by the way.
Romilly.
You might, just in case you don't realise that, Floss is looking at me and pointing at me, and we all know what she means.
Stealing my words.
Taking my words out. Blowjob scene. Honestly, Abby, you've barely heard about the blowjob scene in the amount I've heard about it.
So there was a scene in Girl Crush where there was a blowjob and it got cut, and I was deeply attached to it for comedic value. But now I literally don't give a fuck about it. Romilly was like, if you want to, you can add it to the paperback. And I agree with your decision a year later. And I'm like, absolutely, it needed to fucking go.
But did I hear the end of that blowjob scene?
No,
Floss?
but not because...
In any meeting, Floss would be like, publicity and marketing. She'd be like, yeah, actually, what's really interesting about maybe doing something of Waterstones is the blowjob chapter, and I would be like, how are you skewing this
I can ram it in.
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings.
It's a very horrible part. It's a stressful part.
Yeah.
You get attached.
So yeah, I remember I was literally getting a pedicure, crying with my little piggies and the little
Again, such an
spa.
iconic place to be, like receiving these news.
And then Romilly, I got the script back and I sent a message to either Romilly or Abby, I think, with Girl Crush group chats, fucking everyone. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm distraught. I'm grieving. I was grieving the book I thought I was going to write, and it wasn't going to be the book I thought I was going to write. And I didn't even know, again, first time into the whole fucking thing, I didn't know that a part of writing a book was grieving killing your darlings, and what that means is killing the parts that you're very attached to but don't serve the purpose of the book. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was new for me, and that was probably the hardest part about it, but I really fucking enjoyed writing fiction, and if only because it took me so much out of the internet and into a completely different world. Oh my God, that was such a fucking wonderful chat. I did most of the press for Girl Crush around the book launch, so it's been a little while since I've spoken about it. And it's just completely rejuvenated my love for it in a way. I really hope that this has been useful to you, and for you to see that publishing doesn't have to be some kind of scary boys club where you need to get a certain degree to be in it, or you need to know this person or need to know that person. Thank you to Romilly and Abby for joining me today. Abby can be found on Instagram as Abigail Bergstrom, and her agency is at bergstrom.books. Romilly, my book editor, can be found on Instagram as at Romilly Morgan, and her imprint is at brazen.books.